Exponential Investing, building on the SU platform. What I want to do over the next 20 minutes or so is really do three things. The first is describe briefly our fund, and just as importantly, how we interact with SU and how we leverage the assets of SU to make our investments. The second thing that I want to do is actually take you through a couple of specific examples of deals that we are involved with. One of the things, over the next couple of days, you're going to hear a lot of pretty extraordinary ideas. And I like to think of it maybe as the macroeconomic picture. This is the microeconomic picture. We actually have to invest in some of these ideas. On the one hand, it's very exciting. On the other hand, it's also actually quite tough because, as you will continually hear, technology is changing very rapidly, which means that things that you invest in can often be leapfrogged, and trying to understand where the market is going is a pretty critical component of what we do. So with that as background, let me just start with who we are. We are an early stage venture fund. We're investing in companies that leverage primarily exponential technologies to solve global and important problems. There are three building blocks to the fund. The first is SU, and I'm really going to spend a bunch of time describing how that works. The second, which is also very valuable, is the Peter Diamandis ecosystem. And in fact, the fund BOLD is named after the book that he wrote. So BOLD Capital Partners really takes from Peter's work. And finally, a team of seasoned investors. And it's the three of those that bring the fund together. In terms of understanding the SU ecosystem, the way I like to think about it is really as a series of concentric circles. The first is the faculty. It's 60 plus of worldwide experts in exponential technologies. The second are the alumni, which can be people like you who have come to SU events. There are now north of 4,000 of those worldwide. And the third are corporate partners who really come to SU either to understand how technologies can disintermediate them or how they can find other opportunities within that exponential ecosystem. And finally, you have the brand. And that brand is actually, as an investor, of tremendous value because the brand is now starting to be recognized, whether it's in China, in Europe, in markets where eventually you will want to take your portfolio companies and expand them into those markets. All of those, how do we use all of those? And I consider it a platform. And there are three elements to this platform. The first is deal flow. So interestingly, you might sort of think, okay, deal flow, SU has got an accelerator and an incubator, and that generates some great deals. But for us, what's far more powerful or as powerful is as you go out onto that wedge. I'm going to actually, as I go through a couple of my examples, one of them came out of an alumni who might have been someone in this audience, just like you, an entrepreneur who came to us with his idea. So we can get ideas from SU, the faculty, we can get it from the alumni, from the corporate network, and beyond. So it's a very, very rich ecosystem for deal flow. The second area is due diligence. You have a font of expertise, an incredible set of people, and that goes also to the corporates. And finally, the third is post-investment support. Once we've made investments in our portfolio companies, young companies need fundamentally two things: sales and capital. Eventually, as they scale, they will require other things, but as young companies, they need to prove that their product is being bought, and they will require capital to keep growing. One of the most valuable resources here is, in fact, the corporate network and the alumni network, because those become testing grounds for beta products. They also become places where eventually we can distribute. And again, in the examples that I'll go through, I'll show you how we've actually already started using that. So that's kind of holistically how it works. If I go to the investment areas that we're interested in, they're large problems characterized by global scale. They cover very much the areas that you'll hear about over the next couple of days, whether it's health, energy, education, safety, communication, down the road. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is a health example, which is truly driven by exponential technologies. And as I started saying, this deal came to us from the SU ecosystem, and literally a 10-time serial entrepreneur who I think was ready to retire, actually, came to one of these events, was so inspired that he literally decided that he had another company in him to do. And then came, after he'd done a bunch of work on it, came to us looking for funding. So I'm going to start with that example. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with 3D, 4D ultrasound. And today, I mean, there are a whole range of devices, but the highest quality devices, which give you sort of the best 3D imagery, tend to run at between 100 to 250,000. They're fairly cumbersome, limited access, and believe it or not, you actually need years of training to be able to understand what the ultrasound is giving you as a diagnostic. It's not quite as simple as sort of saying, okay, here is a baby, and now I can tell what's going on. Imagine now where you take this and you transform it into a device that costs less than $1,000, is mobile, ubiquitous in that it doesn't need power, or it needs low power, so you can sort of move around with it. And you can learn to read the results in less than an hour. That, if you can do that, that's an incredible transformation in the medical diagnostic business. And you truly could produce the stethoscope, if you want, of the 21st century. If you take, and I'm not going to go into too much detail into this, but if you take a quick look at what are the things that needed to happen for the probe imager, which is essentially what you use to scan with, it is a revolution in MEMS and sensors which is allowing this product to exist. So, and there are really three elements to it. One of them is the main sensor, the transducer. And through changes in MEMS process innovation, piezoelectric process innovation, so these are all other industries which have got nothing to do with this. And you'll hear that theme over and over again. Things which happen in an unrelated industry which then have an impact on your industry. Those are allowing a very low cost, low power, and that's the key. The piezoelectric transducer runs on 5 volts versus current machines which run on 120 volts. You need to have a plug. Here you don't. You can get super high resolution at the level of the $250,000 machines. So that's one component, again, driven completely by lower costs in MEMS technology. The second is integration of an ASIC into that. I don't know if you've kind of seen probes. They typically have like 50 coils coming out of them, which are very expensive, and that's what takes the various signals back to be processed. By integrating it directly with the transducer, you get rid of those coils. That's sort of from advances in semiconductor. So that's yet another industry. And finally, the graphic processor unit, what's the power of what that's allowing is you're bringing algorithms and machine learning into the device to reduce the amount of training. So a lot of things are happening here to be able to get this dramatic change in a medical device. From our perspective, if this works, as an investment thesis, one, it disrupts the medical imaging market. Today, 75% of the world has no access to medical imaging. You'd be able to provide that to that other 75%. And it is it's basically the modality of choice of the World Health Organization. So if you could achieve this, this truly does transform the world. From an investment perspective, we are looking to build the next billion-dollar medical device company. Now, I'm sure, how many of you are angel investors or kind of do direct investors? Okay, a fair number in here. That's kind of the picture before you go to the first board meeting, is the way I like to describe it. It's before you kind of find the millions of problems to really make this happen. And that's something which venture capitalists face the whole time, is that there are tons of great ideas. How do you make those great ideas a reality? In my book, 80% of it is having extraordinary entrepreneurs and a great team. It far surpasses any technology. But if you have both, then you're in great shape. And the question is, how do we use the SU platform to help support that? So first of all, we were helped in terms of the sourcing of the deal, which I talked about. We actually also worked with them for 6 months to refine their strategy, which is one of the best ways to do due diligence with someone, the ability to actually get to know them and spend time with them. But interestingly, we already have, as potential funders and product development support, one of the SU corporates who wants to invest, who potentially wants to invest, and is interested in helping with the manufacturing. That, for a startup, is a huge asset if you can bring that to the table. It raises the odds of success by orders of magnitude. And that's exactly what we're trying to do when we say we want to leverage the SU platform. So that's one example. The second example is in the food and in the food area, in the agricultural agri-tech market. Biopesticides. US farm losses are in the billions of dollars despite the use of chemical pesticides. And in fact, probably today, up to 30% of chemical pesticides have been banned. Now, we've actually done an immense amount of progress in using chemical pesticides, which are far less toxic than what used to be used 20, 30 years ago, but there is still a lot of benefits to biopesticides. The problem is that they were a big promise with poor results. Expensive, difficult to store, and challenging to use. What these guys did, and this is another theme that you will hear over the next couple of days, is the confluence of different industries coming together. In this case, this team brought some experts from pharma with some experts from agriculture and used molecular delivery systems to actually transport a fairly common biopesticide, which has got a 20% efficacy when it's used on crops, and are able to, in the lab and in some of their tests, actually achieve better results than chemical pesticides and improve yields. So when they use this on grapes, untreated grapes, you've got 10% containment of fungus and in that area. With chemical, 94%. With the MDS biopesticide, 98% control, so better than the chemical, and increase the yield by 70%. If those results can continue at scale, you again will transform the food agricultural industry. And here you can see it. This is, I believe, actually cotton fields, untreated and treated. For us, investment thesis, same story: reshape the global agricultural and crop care market, build the next billion-dollar ag tech company. And in terms of platform support, the deal actually came again out of that larger ecosystem. In fact, an investor within SU who wanted us to help with the due diligence, and that's how we got involved in the deal. And now we have several partners within the SU ecosystem who want to distribute this product in international markets, and are ready sort of the moment it passes certain tests and trials. So another example of how we're able to leverage the ecosystem to do very, very, what we believe are and hope will be very valuable investments. Interestingly, as a final point on this deal, from the brand perspective, the deal was oversubscribed. There was more money going into this deal than there was allocation. And we actually got an allocation because of the perceived value of the ecosystem. So as an investor, that's a hugely, hugely valuable asset to come to the table with. So I hope those two examples give you a sense of, one, the kinds of things that we're looking at, and how we're bringing the resources of SU and beyond to the investment platform. My final comments have got to do really some thoughts about what it takes to invest in this climate. I would say that historically, venture success relied on seeing the best deals, focus, and value add from the GP. At least two of those remain very much the same. But I think that in this world where multiple technologies are exploding and permeating across industries, you actually need to bring to the table three other things. The first, you have to be abreast of rapid technological development, and it doesn't mean in just one area. And it's actually kind of hard to do that if you don't have the resources of something that you can tap into. The second is cross-sector knowledge. This is no longer, like the example of the 3D ultrasound, you're talking semiconductor industry, you're talking MEMS, which may have had nothing to do with that particular medical device sector. You're talking about artificial intelligence for learning. Those are all in their own right different industries, and bringing them together and understanding what you can create out of them is both a challenge, but at the same time really builds extraordinary companies if they work. And then the final is partnerships on a global scale. You will hear the 10 billion people, the billion people in this universe. Today we can reach them, and the truly successful companies of scale are the ones that are able to get out into those markets competitively. And having a partners who can accelerate that, whether they be corporate or alumni, is a big, big plus. So I'm actually going to stop here, and if you have some questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, but we really wanted to take 15 minutes, I think it's been 15, 20, to give you a sense of how we are not just doing the theory, but also investing and acting on it. Peter, do you have a comment or something that you'd like to add?
Yeah. First of all, let's give it a hand for.
Thank you.
So just to add a little bit, and I didn't fully hear Rob's introduction of you. One of the things. So SU looked at creating a venture fund back a few years ago, and we ended up hiring somebody to do that who got stolen away by Bill Gates to go run his fund, and I was not very happy at Bill for doing that, but it put us off about a year. And then Max Bricklin, Max, were you in the back of the room? Max, one of the principals at BCP, had joined my team and had started some venture funds, so let's do it again. So back about 2 years ago now, we formed this fund. Timur, who was had studied, got his PhD in physics from MIT, had run a number of funds, Time Warner Ventures and Monitor Ventures, and so this became a partnership between SU, myself, and Timur. And what I want to do is, if you're in the SU ecosystem, consider this as a mechanism for capital that might be investable at the seed or Series A. I'm personally making all my investments through this fund personally. So the deals that I see, I'm bringing a large number of deals to the team. This is about a $100 million fund right now. We'll probably allow a little bit more in. If it's something you're interested in, please come up and see myself or Timur. We're going to close this out probably in the next 30 days, roughly, thereabouts. But the situation is there is going to be I think a bifurcation in investing coming on forward very soon. There are going to be sort of the traditional deals that we all get a chance to see, and then we're going to see these runaways that are driven by machine learning, that are driven by a new level of economics that we haven't seen before. So one of the things that I think BCP offers to investors differently is you get a chance to actually see all the deal flow. We meet twice a year with all of our participants and give them an access to what we're seeing if they want to invest in addition. And it's really an investment in what are the bold ideas, what are the billion-dollar opportunities, but what are the ones that are also solving the world's grand challenges. It's doing well and doing good at the same time. Are there any questions in the room here, please?
So how do you choose companies to come into the ecosystem? I see a lot of deals in Florida, not Florida.
I would say that there are certain filters. Some of the easiest filters are where the deals are coming from, the reference, the quality of the entrepreneur. So let me give you the easiest deal to invest in. The easiest deal to invest in is an entrepreneur that you already invested in before, who made money for you, and is now coming and wants to do another company. You know what they're capable of, they've shown that they can win. So that is a very easy filter. And then it goes from there. I'll be happy to take more than...
I'll answer that in the following way. I see probably about 100 to 200 deals a year that come to me through my network. And I filter them, and the ones that I'm most excited about, I will pass through to BCP in that regard. And that goes for a number of our other partners too.
Yeah.
Please.
So the fund is a 10-year fund, which is fairly standard in the venture industry. But we've actually already made 10 investments. The portfolio will be 25 plus or minus companies. So I would say that most of the new money, most of the new money in the ground will be done within the next year and a half. then it will be follow-on investments. And, you know, if you go to averages, things exit between 5 to 7 years after you invest.
And what's the gross number of deals you're going to do?
25, and maybe
Time for
30.
two more quick questions. David, and then in the back there, please.
We have some pretty large investors in the fund, so you tend to bias those co-investment opportunities to larger investors. Having said that, there are quite a few instances where the larger investors really want to pile their money at the later stage, and smaller investors are willing to sort of put a little bit more money at a higher risk earlier.
One more question.
So our sweet spot are what are called A and B rounds. We do some seed investing. We've set aside, I don't know, $5 million to do seed investing in 20 companies at about $250,000 each. But our real sweet spot is A and B rounds. So that could be post-development, maybe some traction, but it doesn't have to have revenue. But if it's got revenue, that's even better.
So I'll just give you guys an email. Max's email is max, M-A-X-X, at Bold Capital Partners. If you want to reach out, or Timur at Bold Capital Partners, or Peter at Bold Capital Partners, .com. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you.